60 knots.
Check.
V1, rotate.
Are the mics on?
The mics are on. Hello, everybody. Today, we're joined by Chantal Dugas from Air Canada, who leads diversity, equity, and inclusion, along with community relations and partnerships. Chantal has spent over 25 years in the aviation industry and is deeply passionate about creating more inclusive pathways and expanding outreach within aviation. Thank you for joining us, Chantal.
Thank you. It's such an honor to meet with you. Thank you very much for the invitation.
Chantal, can you start by telling us a little bit about your career journey? Why pick aviation and aerospace to even begin with?
Okay, well, that goes back to when I was a young child. Both my parents worked for Air Canada. So my mother was a reservation agent and my dad was a flight attendant. So as I was growing up, I had 3 siblings. So, and we only had one car and we lived outside the city. So very often when my dad was working, we were all driving my dad to the airport because we needed to keep the car. So we would go to the airport and spend some time at the airport and watch the plane arrive and depart. As a young kid, I was right away kind of introduced to aviation. One of our favorite game when we were at home is we were lining up chairs in the kitchens and we were like playing, like flight attendants. And of course, my older sister, she used to be the captain. So she put my dad's uniform because at the time, even the flight attendants had, the hat. So we were dressing up and we were playing, air travel agency and, flight attendant pilots. So that was my introduction to aviation. But I had another passion as a kid and it was horseback riding. So for me, that came first. So when I went to school, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. So I kind of followed my sister's step into business administration because I wanted to continue to ride. And I knew that seeing my dad, he was traveling all the time. He was never home. This is not what I wanted to do. Although I loved aviation, I didn't know, how I could fit in. So it was interesting that when I graduated from school, I started, working in, organizations and human resources. But my dad kept telling me, why don't you apply? You like aviation. And my sister wanted to be a pilot. But back then, my dad said, no, this is not for a woman. So she continued into finance. So other days, other mindset. And funny enough, my younger brother went into pilot school. So it was still in the family. And anyhow, so I finally ended up applying to Air Canada. And it's interesting because what I think, and this is something that we're going to talk, I guess, later on, is that no matter your skills or your interests, there is a place in aviation for you. And to this day, I can still not exactly pinpoint why aviation does that to you. But once you get into aviation, you cannot get out of it, no matter the type of positions you do. And it was nice because I find, based on my skills and my interests and my personality, I did find my place in aviation, which, the type of job that I do, somehow I could do it in any type of industry, but I would never change. I would never change the industry. Aviation is fast-paced, challenging. It's always something new, exciting. And of course, when you fly, even though you're not a pilot, it's still, every time I step into an aircraft, I still have my, my heart is beating and I can't wait to take off. So this is how I got into my role. And my role in particular, like right now, community relation, over the years, there was a lot of people that were not represented into aviation. It was pretty linear. It was male-dominated. I always wondered, why is that? We need different type of people. We travel around the world, and it's such a great industry and different type of roles. Why is it that we were not better represented? right from the start, it was kind of a mission for me to try to understand why these gaps and what I could do, what I could bring in from the role that I was having, how I could change that. And slowly with time, fast paced, from when I started to today, I realized the importance of community work, like to connect with the community in different ways. Like, yes, because you do have to have that connection in order to understand your customers' needs, your market, but also your employees. It's a great way also, if you want to attract the right people, is to have that relationship with someone. When I kind of understood that was a number of years ago, when at the time I was also responsible for linguistic services. And we were trying to recruit bilingual people outside Quebec, which was a little bit more challenging because the percentage of people who speaks French is not as high as in Quebec. And so I reached out to some of the French communities outside Quebec, and I still remember one of the person I've met looked at me and says, "Why are you here? You're here because you need me." I said, "I'm going to help you when you really care about us, and you're not only here because you need us." And it kind of made me realize then the importance of cultivating, first creating that relationship, building the partnership, building the relationship, and maintain it over the years, so that it's not performative, but it's really a relationship that you build. And I read from that day when I started doing that in the different type of communities, right away, make the connection and understand. And this is how I was able to build partnerships and then build initiative and create activities and programs that would help people get into the organization and support, because it's not always easy depending on the job that you want to do, the career, not to mention, becoming a pilot. You do need that support system. By having this relationship and partnership, it's much, much easier.
If you can just kind of walk us through, what does like a day-to-day look like in the life of Chantal? Like what is it your 9 to 5 typically at work? Just so we can kind of walk in your shoes a little more on what you do.
Wow. If you would talk to my kids and husband, they would probably say that my work is always in my head because I see opportunities everywhere. So basically, depending on the time of the year, there's a period in the year where there's a lot of events in the community, either to promote aviation, or in schools, there's a lot of career fairs or education fairs where different organizations will go promote, their different jobs. So during that period of time, that there's a lot of planning. I don't do this alone, obviously. So it's coordinating with some of my colleagues, but also with employees that do the work. Because I'm only the HR girl, there's nothing exciting about really. So I need the people to actually do the job so that they could share their passion and their own journey. And so that also the youth or the people that we're meeting can see themselves. So there's a lot of coordination there. There's a lot of planning. I'm following, in terms of the representation in the organization. So I work closely with the HR, but the different branches to understand their needs and try to support them the best we can in our initiatives and activities. So, for instance, maintenance branch. So they've been struggling for the last couple of years, and they've been trying to see how they could build a pipeline because there's a large number of their aircraft mechanics that will be retiring. So in order to keep up with the demand that is continuously rising, we need to support. So we're working with them to go to these schools that provide those programs, but also at an earlier age. So we also going to schools to talk about these careers. And there's also all the program developing, like the scholarships, the mentorship. Again, it's working with the different branches, the community members. So it's kind of building the bridges between the business needs, the community needs, and try to see how we could support. So there's never a day that is the same. Sometimes it starts very, very early because we do a lot of events also in-house. So that requires a lot of coordination, with the different branches. If we bring in people in the hangar or into our in-flight training facilities, we need to work with the different teams and make this work. So yeah, that's pretty much. So there's a lot of traveling because we cover Canada. And we try as much as possible to be fair and offer as many, opportunities across the country. And we do meet with different community members across the country. So there's a lot of traveling, a lot of events, a lot of planning and program developing. Right now, we're working on a program to support the teachers that once we go to schools and we present to the kids, after that they have all kinds of questions and they go back home and then the parents ask questions. So we're kind of developing, material that we could leave with the professors, teachers after we visit, and that the kids could take home. And hopefully, we'll have something also on our entertainment system where kids could actually learn about aviation. But that's phase 3. It's always spinning in my head. I always, people sometimes look at me and say, okay, finish this project, Chantal, and then we could think about the next one. I said, yeah, but I have all these ideas. Anyway, so that's what makes my jump fun.
Very interesting.
I see. And you haven't been in this role your entire career at Air Canada. So how did you work your way to where you are now?
That's very interesting. When I first started my career at Air Canada, I was with the recruitment team. And maybe a year and a half, 2 years that I was in a role, I worked with someone who was doing special programs, so community work, internships, and she asked me to go with her. And this is really where I got to get the feeling of, community work and partnership. That kind of, okay, I like that part. 2 years later, when she left on maternity leave, the position was open. It was a temporary position, but I jumped on it because I said, well, this is what I want to do. So bad for her and lucky for me, she did not come back to our role. So I kept the role. And at the same time, I was given the responsibility of managing official languages. So I kind of navigate, at the time it was called employment equity, which is a little different. It was more, driven by the Employment Equity Act. And it was not something, we were more focused on, I would say, representation than all the diversity and inclusion. So I was managing that and official languages. And for a number of years, the role kind of evolved and I managed the whole linguistic services, but always had employment equity. It was not a priority, so it was not enough to make a full-time job out of it. Even though, I was coming up with all these ideas and plans, at the time, the company was just not ready to invest more into the program. But by pushing, kind of evolved with time and was given more, staff and more flexibility to introduce or to try things. I was always very privileged, even though I said that, we weren't ready to do that. Every time I proposed something with time, you kind of learn the timing, when to ask for stuff. And I was always supported by the leadership team. Even though sometimes they were not sure, I was always supported. So this is how we started introducing the first scholarships, going into schools, even though, because at the time I said, well, why go to schools? We're not hiring them right away. I said, no, we're investing in the future. So it kind of built up with time. And what really changed was even before COVID, we could see that there was an increasing demand, not only from the community, but from the customers and also from employees about what is the company commitment in regards with diversity and inclusion. What are we doing to connect the community? What are we doing to give back? So there was more and more requests. Even the passengers, they were sending comments about, how well, actually felt good when they could see someone that spoke their language or looked like them, and and I still see it today. A lot of comments we get from customer is, when I see the maple leaf or I walked into an aircraft, I already feel home. But this is how my role actually evolved. It kind of evolved by itself. I could have taken different steps, but every time, there was a new challenge or a new door, that was opening. So I wanted to continue because even though sometimes I didn't feel like it was going fast enough, little step at the time, we were getting a little more. And after COVID, we were actually very lucky in a way because then it was a strong voice raised by the employees about what the company was doing. And not only the employees, but the management team, the people managers, they wanted to support. They didn't know how to deal with the different requests, with the different cultures, with different generation. A manager is there to, they're especially in operation. They're there most of the time because of their skills, technical skills, not necessarily what we call the soft skills or the people skills. So they came to our small team quite often about, how we could support them. So this is how we kind of grew. And at some point, I had to, and at that time, I still had the language services, and it was way too much. I mean, I was working 12 hours a day more. It was completely crazy. So I said, no. I said, I really want, because I had the feeling that I was not giving my 100% in neither of my two roles, really. So I made a proposal. I said, listen, I feel after all these years, I know my strength and I know where I can have most impact. So even though I believed in linguistic services and official languages, I said, my heart is with diversity and inclusion. I really want to give my full attention. And I did say, I want to really focus on community work and partnership. I said, this is, I think, where my experience and my skill can do the most. And this is how I ended up. So you don't necessarily know, how when you start, where it's going to take exactly. But that's what interesting. And this is maybe aviation is like that because it's always changing. And it's the people that makes the business that really kind of shape who we are. So this is why, it makes it even more interesting. I find that people that go into a DEI role or community relations all have this, I guess, common mindset or goal of bringing people together. This is the baseline of our work. I don't really see how you could actually be successful in DEI if you don't care about others, if you're not mindful of the different, I guess, aspect of, the culture. We talk sometimes about emotional intelligence. I like to refer to cultural intelligence too. And I think that's essential for this to work in DEI. Because I think what we do in this role is really help people. You cannot change everyone, obviously, but you could help them see things differently, be conscious of different behaviors that could have an impact on others. Especially in some of the roles we have in leaders, you could actually, based on what you say or do, you could actually change someone's life in a positive or negative way. So in a day-to-day, especially in a fast-paced environment and as aviation and changing and very stressful. I mean, we talked about weather. I mean, it could change. And so the impact on the staff, they still have a schedule, and never forget safety first. In aviation, it's always that what we have to keep in mind first. So how do you stay safe, focused in a changing environment? There's a lot of pressure on the staff, so the leaders need to be able to care enough, and you could be on top of things, you could be sharp, you could follow the procedures, but still by your behavior get the people to support you. If you walk the talk, I use that a lot. You need to walk the talk. If the staff feel you support, you respect them, they will do anything for you. I think really, in order to be successful, you need to be caring, open-minded. If you like to stay by yourself in the corner and not talk to anyone, this is not a place for you. And funny enough, I'm a very shy person.
Interesting. I could never tell. Wow. Well, one thing that I also had as a question was we admire your work as a leader, and not only what you've done within the community, but what you do within your own role as a managerial position as a leader. And so one of the things that I wanted to ask was, what are some skills or mindsets that leaders can start to develop earlier on? And so I think one of them that you mentioned was walk the talk, which is great. And I think that that's something that I think even just as pilots as well, right? Like you're in a leadership role, whether you be a flight attendant, whether, you're a gate manager, there's leaders in different roles. And so I think that's a great message.
Yes. And I think that some of the things that as a leader, I think, and that you have to remember first is to be curious. Curious about the people, curious about the work, how things are done, why things are done this way, the people behind the work, what are they going through? Ask questions. It's not about the power. Yes, you have leaders. You need someone to lead the team, but it's not, when you have a conversation with someone, it's an exchange. You have a team, you have different skills. You need everyone in the team to work together to achieve the goals. So curiosity, humility, because you don't know everything. You have to accept that you don't know everything. And in a very safety critical environment, you cannot play the role like, okay, well, I'm ashamed. I don't want to say that I don't know and take risks. You can't do that. So you do have to accept that you don't know everything and ask for help when it's needed. This is something for sure. Also, as I mentioned, walk the talk. I mean, I know that I'm a very strict leader in the sense that I don't like to cut corners. I like rules. So maybe that's why also I like aviation, because I like rules. I like, a structure, but at the same time, there's different ways to approach a situation within the structure that you have, the framework that you have. I think that that's important through that framework or that guidelines to work in a collaborative way. So to share, to make people feel comfortable. I'm going to work very hard. I expect my team to work very hard, but I will always be respectful of how they are, and I will always check on them. Are they okay? Do they need any help? Do they need support? What do they need in order to achieve their work? This is something that is very important for me. As demanding I could be, I will always be there for my team, and I always acknowledge the limit of everyone. And for me, it's very important to have a balance, taking care also of your health, taking care of your family. So family is always, for me, very important. So if you have some challenge or concerns about your family, this comes first, always. So I think this is something that I feel as a leader that is important. And I feel that if you do that, your team's going to come to you whenever there's a concern. So before it actually becomes a real problem, they will come and share and talk and share, ask. It's better also for finding solution to a problem, because if you create that communication channel and that level of trust, it's much easier to have these conversations. Sometimes we don't know always necessarily agree. But if we are able to share our vision or perspectives, then, we could come up with the best solution all as a team.
So, alongside the skills that help people to be strong leaders today, at the start of the podcast, you mentioned that when you kind of stepped into the world of aviation, one of the first things you noticed was that people weren't being appropriately represented, and you felt a need to go in and try to help the situation and do something about it. What do you think it is about yourself that made you, for one, even realize that, hey, maybe there is an issue happening? And then the second step, which is I want to now do something about it. Because not everyone has that. I might go into a room and not notice that, hey, everyone around me is a guy. But someone like you went to aviation, you're like, this doesn't really seem correct, and I could help out.
I can't explain because very often, we'll say, and I say it every day, when it does not impact you, you don't see it. When I first started, yes, in HR, most of the HR people were women, but in other department, it was all men. I was going into meeting and I was the only woman. It says, why am I the only woman here? Like it kind of didn't feel good. And then I started, looking also for, different generations. And I noticed that there were not that many culturally diverse people too. And it kind of bothered me because in population, in schools, in France, everywhere, you could see that diversity of, at all the levels, and it didn't feel right. And I was getting a lot of response like, oh, we always done this way. Oh, it's like that. Oh, that's how it is. About sometimes the comments, I would hear it says, oh, that's the industry, that's normal. No, I don't buy that. So this is really when I started talking to people. And then we had people from the leadership team, the new people, new leaders that also, because obviously I was not the only one noticing this. So by talking to different people, we started raising awareness and helping people look at, because a lot of people didn't realize that. And as today, when I mention it, like just to give you an example for, let's say, accessibility. If you have your full flight, you see the hazard when you walk, when you go into a space, so you don't notice any hazard that someone that would have low visibility. If you're part of the majority, you don't necessarily have a barrier to whatever you're trying to do. You won't notice it. That's normal nature. And but I don't know. For some reason, I saw that. I heard the people talk about it, and I decided that I would help people change that.
One thing you mentioned, and I think that this is a common theme we've seen from a lot of women on our podcast that have spoken about their journey. Aviation has been very hierarchical and a structured industry. People say that this is just how it's been done for years, and this is why we're going to keep it this way. How were you able to cultivate such changes, such a different movement, right? We noticed that within the later 2000s, DEI became such an important aspect of not just aviation, but almost every company, every organization. How hard or how easy was it in aviation where traditions and standardization is so valued? And you're speaking to men about changing that we want just men, right? Like, what was that experience like?
It's not easy. It's a journey. It will take years before you could actually feel it, really feel. But although there's been a lot of changes, you take different approach with different people. Some people will like facts, number. So you have to be able to find a way to demonstrate by, let's say, having a diverse team will increase their performance. Or for instance, if you do not create an environment where people feel safe, as an example, you will have more complaints, and the complaints will cost money. So when you talk money, sometimes people understand. Same thing with retention. If you don't create an environment where people feel welcome, you lose your people. Again, there's a cost to this. There's a lot of work. You have to start all over the process. So it's bringing people by some example. It's not something, that you wake up one day or, they say, oh, we have to do this. It's going to be nice. No, there's been studies, there's been information, facts that demonstrate that having a diverse, inclusive culture, because I like to specify that a lot of people think that, and this is where some organizations are different from others, the ones that at some point say, oh, it's important, we're going to hire, people from different backgrounds, but they forget the inclusion part. To some extent, it's easy to have representation. It's another thing to make people feel welcome, respected, feel that they're valued, that they bring something to the organizations, and to retain them. And this is where you actually see the culture change. So it's not about, you don't necessarily talk only about, and this is how we introduce in a structured environment, that you move the walk to the talk. So you do not talk about inclusion, you actually show what inclusion is about. And slowly, as you see the impact, or people see what you're saying is true or right, or they actually see the impact on their and the results within their environment, they start changing. And it's not about changing necessarily all the structure but it's the behavior. It's a different approach. There's a time where, in order to be a boss, you need to be feared by your staff. No, not anymore. You could even get more from your team if you have a collaborative approach as support. You set your expectation clear, you give them the tool, you give them a seat at the table, you listen to them, you have them part of finding the solutions, and you'll get even more out of your employees than if you would, go with the stick. So this is slowly how you change. You keep the structure. The structure will be there, It's a very regulated environment. We won't change that. And we need to keep, that to some extent. But it's how we manage people, how we treat people. And it's not only about the employees, but it changes also our customers' experience into their journey. Because the same way you listen to your employees, their expectation, their needs, you do the same thing for your customers in order to adapt your product, your service, and they will feel it. And the employees that feel respected will obviously
bring back their business.
Yes. So there's a way. It takes time, though. It takes time to change a culture. It's not just about, a buzzword. I think some organizations actually study impact on their financial results. If you create an environment where people feel valued and where they could bring something, they will be more engaged. You also increase the level of creativity, innovation, and it will have an impact on the financial result of the organization. So, and because it's a global industry, you cannot avoid this. And at the same time, we are privileged because we are global. We do attract people with different cultural background, different generations, different way of thinking, different perspective. Right now, with all the technology changes and everything, it's great.
I realized that at the beginning of the podcast, we never really gave a strong definition as to what DEI is, because as Trisha mentioned earlier, it has become a lot more popular within the last couple years. And it is a buzzword. People hear it and they have an idea that they know what it means, but this is what you do. If I was in a coma for the last 10 years and I woke up and you had to explain to me what DEI was, what would you say?
Okay, so let's start with diversity. So diversity means everyone is a little different from, their education, age, lived experience, gender, belief. So we all bring, our baggage of who we are So what you want in an organization is to have a representation of the community, but also by having, diverse way of thinking, lived experience and skills, you have a better way to solve problems. You're more creative because if everyone thinks the same way, well, everyone will say, "Oh yes, you're right, you agree, we all," but you won't think out of the box. So that's diversity, really. It's acknowledging that everyone is different and everyone is bringing something from their perspective. Then you have the equity. The equity back then, if you go back many years ago, when the federal government created the Employment Equity Act, it was about giving a fair chance for employment because a number of people didn't get an equal access. And when I say, and a lot of people kind of mix equity and equality. So equity is, and to make it visual, I'll make it very simple. I need to get something, in my kitchen cupboards. I try to reach the top shelf. I can't reach it. My husband, who's 6 foot tall, just stretches his arm and could grab whatever I need. So equity would mean that I'm provided with the tools in order to get what I need on the shelf. So the same thing in the workplace is providing, tools so that everyone has same and equal access to the jobs and promotion. So, and very often, you will hear, "Oh, well, I treat everyone the same way, so nobody can say that, I was biased." But by doing this, you actually put barriers because not everyone learns the same way. And not everyone will apply the same way or will understand the same in terms of, let's say, cultural or different beliefs in a job interview will not necessarily react the same way or answer the same way. So you need to be aware of these differences. So this is about equity, and inclusion is about making people feel like they belong. Like they are valued for who they are, for what they bring. And for a long time, that part was forgotten. People only focused on numbers or representation. They didn't think about the human behind, the numbers but it's much more. If you don't create that environment where people feel safe, or feel valued for who they are, then you don't have that. You cannot say that you have an inclusive environment. That's essential, in order to, for people to feel safe, people to grow, feel good about themselves. Yes, and that's the overall.
For young people entering aviation today, especially those who might not really see themselves represented in the industry, what advice would you give to them?
To follow their passion. Don't let anyone tell them that they do not belong and that they cannot succeed. If this is what they want to do it. Just go for it and create that network around you. Find people. Try to find organization, schools or social organization that could support you into the process. Don't stay by yourself. Don't stay alone. Build that network of people, that community around you. I think this is very, very important. And there will always, even though you might not see necessarily yourself, there is a community somewhere, somehow, that follows the same path and can support. I think that's very important. But never, never, never let anyone say that you don't belong. That's the key message.
Is there anything about your own personal pathway of where you are today from where you started? I don't like using the word regret, but that you would want to change? Or are you happy with everything the way it unfolded?
Yes and no. I would definitely, if I could go back, I would try to go more, or for a period of time, go work more behind the scene every time I work with some colleagues or I learn more about the behind the scene, there's so much behind, that people have no idea to make an airline work. So many roles, so many details, so many rules and regulation. It's fascinating. So I would have loved to go back and go into different roles just to better understand the business, because I find that the more you know about the business, the better you understand also some of the decisions and what's happening. So that I would do. And obviously, with experience, that's the beauty, I guess, of, experience, is that maybe I would take different approach, would be a little bit more daring, maybe at some point to get things done a little faster. But overall, I'm happy with what I've achieved so far. I think I'm proud to say that some of the programs or activities that we do are there because of the work that I've done and because I was stubborn enough to continue pushing. And so, yes, I think. But yes, doing a little bit more of the behind the scene work. I still like to go into, and you learn every day, whether you go into cargo or even at airports, all the people that are required for a flight to take off. Right. I mean, it's just amazing. And sometimes you wonder, oh my God, how do they do this so many times a day? And, it's for the passengers and most of people, it's like it doesn't even show. So yes, you'll see the people complaining when the flight is delayed or when there's but all the work that is being done is just amazing. So to spend more time with these employees in different roles would be something that I would do.
That's one thing that we also have learned to appreciate. And through this podcast, we hope to bring people like yourself from different aspects of aviation and aerospace. I think when you think about the word, at least for me, it was pilot or air traffic control, maybe maintenance, maybe flight attendant, but there's so many more people. And people like yourself and the work that you do and the opportunities you create and cultivate is exactly who we want to showcase on this podcast. One question I did have, kind of going back to just we were talking about it in the very beginning, you mentioned that your parents were in aviation, your brother kind of found himself in aviation, your sister might have dabbled in aviation. And you also mentioned family is a big aspect of who you are and something you care for. If they weren't in aviation or aerospace, do you still think you would have found yourself in this industry today?
Probably not. Probably not. And this is what we find when we go to schools or to different type of events where public are coming. If you do not know someone in aviation, it's not something that you think about. And you pointed out, very often people will think flight attendants, air traffic controller, and not even sometimes and pilots, and that's all they think about. And for a lot of people, they don't think it's achievable. They only think, oh, you're never home. They don't know about it. And if you're not connected to someone in aviation, so that's why I find it so important to promote aviation and all the various careers, because there are so many, whether you're, in finance, marketing, as a lawyer, there are so many different type of lawyers working for an airline, for contract, for labor relations, human rights, for finance, revenue management, people that actually calculate, how many seats at what cost you need to charge or in order to make money on which type of aircraft, calculate which aircraft to purchase, and how to assign to a different route. This is fascinating. But to your point, because it's not something that is necessarily out there all the time, or when it's in the news, it's for the bad reasons. This is, I think, why the work that we do is important to promote aviation. There's so many, the need for, whether it's flight attendants, aircraft mechanics, air traffic controller. Did I mention pilots? Probably. But pilots, just over the next 10 years is huge. But I would probably not have gone into aviation if it was not for my parents.
Well, I think that's exactly what everyone's trying to achieve with outreach and DEI is changing that. For someone that might not have parents in the industry, we want them to still see themselves as a part of this industry. We did want to ask, what is next for Air Canada in this industry with respect to DEI? Are there any new projects that you might be able to share some insight on?
Well, some of the projects we're working, I kind of touch on it a little bit earlier, is really develop material to promote aviation, to help the ones that know that they want to join aviation. So the different programs to support. So I strongly believe in mentorship, network, scholarship, all that is very, very important. But also promoting at an earlier stage, like young kids, high school, but even elementary school. I find that it's important. So developing material to support that and the employees, because we have a lot of employees who already, go to their kids' school, neighbors, or to talk about their job, but we need to better equip them. So that definitely. And we work also in supporting the managers to make their life easier in a way. If we give them the tools on how to manage difficult situation, also just in terms of their own knowledge to better support. So we do deliver a lot of training. Both are unionized and managers. So we do that, and we focus also a lot on allyship. It's as important to support your colleagues that it is to support, I guess, your own cause. So allyship is important, and what is an ally, and how they could actually contribute to changes also.
Well, Chantal, you mentioned something that I think we need to echo, that a lot of what we've seen, and Arjen and I are just scratching the surface with our time in this industry. There's a lot of initiatives that with your support, with Air Canada support, would not have existed today. So before we conclude, we do want to give a big thank you to yourself for being so invested in this industry and for speaking on behalf of those that might not have a voice yet to speak up for, and the work that Air Canada is doing. Northern Lights wouldn't be Northern Lights without the support of Air Canada. This podcast wouldn't be here. So to have such representation, it means a lot. And we're very happy that you were here to join us today and share a part of your story, a part of who you are. And we're sure that it must have inspired someone out there. And we hope that they can take some of the advice you've left us with. Thank you again for your time. We appreciate you. And we're excited to see what you are working on next and what will happen next.
Well, thank you very much. It was a great honor to meet both of you.
Yeah, thank you. And with that, we leave our listeners to enjoy episode 15. We wish you all blue skies and tailwinds ahead. We'll see you next time.